But what penance could ever cleanse the Christian blood that stains this soul?
How's it going, Scott?
Good, Stephen. Things okay with you?
Yep, doing pretty well. Guess here we are to talk a little bit about Knightfall. I figured we could talk about episode 5, but maybe touch a little bit on episode 4 too, since I was not there for episode 4, but I did watch episode 4 last night after you and I were talking on Facebook.
Right.
And yeah, so I don't know, like kind of like you and I were just saying, the show seems to be getting pretty weird. You and I were talking a little bit earlier about this whole issue of, okay, so I guess it was the end of episode 3. We had this guy, this Saracen who was captured or something, and we've got this knight Tancred who confessed to murdering him.
Yeah, and the Saracen was an important prisoner for some, he knew something.
Right. And you and I were talking about how it's pretty ridiculous, this idea that this Templar would be condemned to death and all that stuff for killing a Saracen. Now, I do think, okay, so I can see some situations where there would be a problem with killing a Saracen in a Crusader-controlled territory or a Latin Christian territory. Like, okay, let's say you've got like a vassal, or not a vassal, but like a serf or something, because Saracens were incorporated into the feudal system in the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem.
They were they're
farmers and stuff,
farmers and craftsmen, and they were incorporated just as regular citizens. So just murdering somebody like that straight off may have been you could have gotten in trouble for it. Yeah, you could have gotten in trouble, but in this situation, really he Tancred murdered this guy, and he was the real reason his murder was important in story terms was he was an important prisoner. He had information, but he's getting this horrible and totally unhistorical punishment for murder, not for killing it. They really should be on him for killing an important prisoner rather than.
Yeah, I think one thing that's just really ridiculous is this idea of a cross. I mean, so there's a scene I guess it's the beginning of episode 5. We've got this character Tancred, and he's obviously like been stripped down. He's gonna carry this cross. They say it's called the gauntlet. He's supposed to carry a cross and get hit as he carries a cross. That's just ridiculous. I mean, there is no way that any Christian organization, especially not the Templars, would have used a cross in punishment, because that would be blasphemy. That would be just an unspeakable blasphemy against Christ. And that was something that the Muslims actually did. The Muslims crucified people. They crucified Christians, especially as a way to mock Christianity and to mock Christians. So that really annoyed me. And I think the whole thing is kind of getting into some areas of kingdom of heaven type stupidity and political correctness. And okay, this whole thing, Landry goes to visit this woodland pagan guy, right?
In episode 4. In
episode 4. And he's got like dreadlocks and and he says a little lines about, oh, you Christians are fearful, and kind of all this nonsense. And I find that annoying. I think the truth is that if there were people who kind of practice kind of these sort of kooky pagan sort of spiritual practices back in at the height of the medieval church and whatnot, the church regarded people like that as kind of like just kind of these kooks out in the woods.
As long as they weren't organized, they were just harmless cranks.
Right. And it would be kind of the way that maybe a university professor today would regard maybe somebody kind of in their basement sending broadcasts, you know, off to Saturn or something, you know, just be kind of like, oh, those guys are kind of kooky. Like even like, you know, one thing that is often brought up is like, okay, witchcraft.
Yeah.
Everybody has this image that the church was just on this hunt for witches or something.
I mean, from day one.
Yeah, which is not true. The truth
is
that
didn't start until post medieval times, really.
Right. Yeah. Like the church really didn't take the idea of witchcraft seriously. They thought it was just kind of some storytelling the peasants did, and you know that people don't realize that, you know, the medieval church was intellectual. It was this highly organized, you know, elite organization. Of course, there were, you know, lower levels of it too, like the local priests and stuff. But
yeah,
the administration of the church, the bishops.
Well, that came from the highest, from nobility.
Right. Yeah.
And usually the position proportionate to position in the nobility.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I kind of thought, and you know, the idea that this master of the temple would go talk to a magician, and I mean, I think that's ridiculous. I don't think that would have happened. Again, a guy who's going to be at the top of the Templars is going to be somebody who's from the upper crust of society. So
yeah. Well, we talked about last time that kind of had certain Arthurian echoes. You know, this guy's kind of a Merlin figure. You know, we've talked before about how the show has had these kind of, you know, Arthurian, you know, the search for the Grail, the whole business.
Yeah.
And this guy's kind of a Merlin, maybe in a way. I don't know. It just remains to be seen how the Arthurian theme and the whole show plays out. But
yeah,
I mean, there wasn't much hint of it in episode 5 at all.
So what did you think, Scott, about? So now we're introducing this new concept, like when Landry goes and you know, talks to this pagan witchcraft guy. He has this dream where he remembers. He basically, it looks like what they're alluding to is that Landry's old master Godfrey was actually secretly, again, this is something that's always kind of, you know, imposed on the Templars by fiction, is this idea that the Templars weren't really what they seem to be. Like Landry's mentor Godfrey, he was actually secretly part of something else. He was secretly something else, not just a Templar. There was something else, this Brotherhood of Light thing, right?
And they're just you know, using the, you know, present day, just incorporating a present day myth about the Templars into the show is all I can see there.
Yeah, so
you know, like, yeah, that they're involved with some kind of Illuminati or Brotherhood of Light, as they call it in the show. It's just a tired old theme there.
Yeah, I agree. And it's the thing is, it's really boring too, to me too, because I think, you know, the depth of the spirituality of the Templars, that's what's interesting. And that's worth exploring, you know, but like, I would like to know more about Landry's mentor, Godfrey, you know, what was his spiritual motivation to become a Templar? What was his spirituality like? What were his adventures like in the Crusades? Like, you know, let's look at that rather than this kind of kooky idea of this Brotherhood of Light thing. So,
well, it just seems like something that Hollywood can't get away from.
Yeah.
You know, Kingdom of Heaven, the Templars were an evil, you know, they were an evil brotherhood. At least they're, you know, like we've said many times before, they're portrayed in a positive light here.
More so, yeah.
And much more so in KnightFall, but we still, you know, are stuck with the idea that they're involved in something else than just what they were historically.
Right. So anyway, I guess we should talk about episode 5. Like, I watched it earlier today.
I watched it again just a little while ago.
What'd you think, Scott, overall?
Well, it's like I said before, you know, it's really it's just getting to be its own story now.
Yeah.
And we just have to kind of take it for what it is. And in terms of that, I mean, other than picking up small, like, details, like the thing about the, you know, the cross, the torture, murder of the Saracen prisoner. You know, okay, here's the presence of people the assassins, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I noticed we're getting kind of an Assassin's Creed thing going on.
Yeah, we're getting this exactly. We are getting it. Well, with and then of course there's the whole part about the ambassador, you know, the English ambassador being set up and eventually murdered, and
yeah, I really hated that whole bit. Like
it just dumb.
It's dumb. Yeah, it's a kooky plot device, and of course we've got this this Mongolian warrior babe, who,
a little bit of the you know,
totally absurd. I mean, like
the warrior goddess thing just keeps.
And I think I don't know if you noticed how they kind of had that little part where she kind of like made the little dig at European society,
the honor like, thing.
Your people think that you can buy honor. My people, or it's like me. It's like,
yeah,
oh, yeah, really. The Mongolians were like the big butchers of history.
Oh God, yeah, they were almost up there with Hitler.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
and numbers of people killed.
They were the mass murderers of their era, and you know they just.
But the Mongols were a warrior culture and so on. And and they did, you know, I'm sure they did have their own form of, like every other warrior culture has its own form of, you know, own code or own honor, you know, system of honor, that type of thing. So not completely off, but just kind of dumb. You know, the whole thing about the you know, warrior princess type thing
it's just not believable. Yeah,
it's just not believable.
This little Pop-Tart actress, we're supposed to believe she's some kind of, you know, badass. I mean, it's just, there is just nothing in history that would even remotely lead us to think that someone like that would have existed. And so it's such nonsense to.
Well, it's you know, not, you know, I'm not being politically correct here, but it would have been a man. I mean, you know, yes, I can maybe, if something like that, you know, a woman just would have been in that role.
Yeah, sure. I mean, okay, let's say there was some great Mongolian warrior. Yeah, it would have been a man. Yeah, but
or Mongol, a stealth killer or whatever. It would have been a man. I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's that, and I guess, you know, we've got this whole thing with like you were talking about earlier. the Catalonia thing is just the Queen of Catalonia. She's kind of and then of course we've got the Prince of Catalonia, who they have this plot to kill him, which is just kooky.
Well, I mean, it's just bizarre. You know, they're just. There's no reason for it other than just story. I mean, just to make up a story. I mean, well, you know, in history, I mean, the marriage between, well, I guess he was Prince Edward at the time. Is that correct? Or had he was Longshanks dead? I don't remember the dates. But anyway, it was just a straightforward deal.
Right, yeah.
There wasn't any drama to it. I mean, it was just normal, you know, for the Middle Ages. I mean, you know, an alliance between royal houses. But you know, they just created this whole drama about it where, you know, she betrays him and then it's bizarre. And then of course we've got her relationship with Denogre, which is, like we've said, continues to be kind of creepy.
Yeah, definitely. But I don't know. I have to be honest with you, Scott. Like the course of the show is just, I'm having trouble focusing on it at all when I'm watching it now. Like, should we keep doing these reviews of this show? I don't know.
Well, I'm asking myself the same question. I'm really, you know, I am. You know, I mean, I'll finish watching it myself. You know, I own the season, or I get it through HBO now. So, you know, I'll go ahead and finish it. But as far as us unless the show I don't know. Maybe we should just do it on a week by week thing. Do you plan to continue watching it?
Yeah, I'm going to keep watching it. I'm looking at the chat. A couple of people are saying that we should keep doing these because they're hilarious.
No, okay, yeah. Well, somebody who was it, Omar Torres, got on the board today and something said like he addresses his comment to me, but he says something funny about it, that we should keep it up, you know, yeah, along those lines in a humorous way. But yeah, maybe we could just kind of keep it on a light level and just follow the story through, and if you know if our audience wants it, we'll do it.
Yeah,
the way I look at it.
Yeah, this one guy goes, "You have 11 to 15 loyal viewers," which, since I can't stream on Real Crusades history right now, it's fewer people or fewer eyes are on the stream.
Yeah, we usually get a lot more. I know, and I was kind of looking at that, at the number of likes and comments and stuff, and then I realized, well, this is, you know, because we're not going through our usual channels. So I mean, we're reaching people with this. You know, Helena's posts about, you know, her 10 true tales of the Templars.
Yeah, that's been really good.
Oh, it's been really, really. Yeah. I mean, that's and it's it gets like, you know, 100 likes a week. You know, from all the page, because every Friday morning, you know, I posted around to, you know, all the RCH pages and sub pages and our friend pages and then you know, the usual run of history pages on Facebook, and they're really popular.
Yeah, it's
so
good stuff.
We're reaching a lot of people.
I definitely there's a lot of really good stuff from Templar history, and I don't know, maybe we should just be talking about that on these streams. But I did that little thing about 5 interesting battles from the Knights Templar, and like you know, I think the Battle of Montgessard is one of like that one is so interesting. Like how you've got Baldwin IV and you have, like, what is it, 80 Templars or something, and then a few hundred knights.
You know, he had probably 500 men in all, and they just completely routed Saladin's forces. And just having Baldwin IV on the battlefield, I mean, you know, that's just incredible drama right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, far more, you know, that's what I'm saying. They're just, well, we've all been saying there's so many great stories in the real history that I just don't see the need to embellish it like these TV writers have been doing. It's I mean, just told straight up. That's just incredible.
Yeah. I noticed last time you guys were talking a little bit about that episode from the Chronicle of Usama ibn Munkid, where he talks about okay, so I think Peter brought it up, but yeah, Usama ibn Munkid at that time was the ambassador for the Emirate of Damascus to the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and he was going to pray at a part of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which was occupied. Yeah, it was occupied by the Templars, and he has this little story where he talks about, where he calls the Templars there his friends. It's kind of this really striking thing in this, because it's a Muslim chronicler, and he, you know, he, throughout his chronicle, he like says, curse the Franks, curse, you know, all this, but this one little part, he calls the Templars. He goes, these Templars who were my friends. It's kind of like it's been this huge subject for discussion in the scholarly world, because it's just such a striking, you know, little line there. So it just kind of points to how, I guess, complicated, you know, and nuanced really these interactions were between, say, like the Templars and various Muslim, Muslim diplomats and just representatives of the various Muslim powers that, you know, were their enemies, but at the same time there was, you know, some diplomatic type interactions that could go on to the point where maybe, you know, it could have been possible. There could have been almost some friendliness between,
I would definitely think so. I mean, you know, the Templars were, at least in philosophy, you know, extreme kind of pragmatists, and Now that may not have been reflecting, some of the grand mass, there was a lot of other stuff going on, but I mean, they would have adopted a pragmatic attitude toward, trying to avoid war.
And so this guy,
this goes back to another thing, how the Templars are portrayed, just ready to attack and fight at any time. I mean, just if they see a Muslim, they just go pull their sword and go after them, this whole bullshit narrative like that. But I know I can see that there was, in the Outremer, I mean, there had to be cordial or at least diplomatically cordial relationships between, Muslims and Christians just to get along.
Yeah. And this guy here, OXAO, he's a frequent viewer, commenter around here. He says, loose meaning of the word friend. And yeah, I agree. Like, I think it's kind of like ambiguous how Usama was using that word friend.
Yeah.
Like, did he mean personal friend? Did he mean kind of sort of friendly with them? But it is striking. It's just kind of striking and interesting. But
well, the other story about the Muslim who came to pray at the
oh yeah, that's from that story. Yeah.
Yeah, where and the Templar said, no, you pray.
Well, that wasn't a Templar. It was like what Usama said, some newly arrived Frank kept trying to tell.
Oh, the newly arrived
Frank.
Okay, and the Templars are the ones who corrected him twice.
Yeah, they basically intervened and said, like, leave this guy alone. But that kind of makes sense. Like, you've got an ambassador from Damascus who's setting up a deal with the king of Jerusalem, and he wants to go, do a prayer. And the Templars have kind of arranged for a place for him to go pray. And somebody's interrupting him. They're going to be like, God, would you get lost? This is, this is a diplomat from Damascus. We're dealing with this guy. Because at the time it was very delicate because the Crusaders were trying to stop Damascus from falling into the hands of Nur ad-Din, who was, Zengi's son, right?
Yeah.
And so if that had happened, that would have been a problem for them, as they're trying to maintain this diplomatic relationship with Damascus. So,
well, that particular story speaks as much to the tolerance of the Muslim as it does to the diplomacy of the Templars.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's very true. Like, the Muslims were very willing to deal with the Crusaders.
I mean, he was willing to, just kind of accept it as a dumb mistake and didn't get all offended about it. And the Templars handled it in a, an efficient and polite manner. And I guess the whole incident turned out to be nothing but kind of a funny story in history now. But one indicative of a lot of things with a lot of meaning there.
Yeah. So I'm just answering some people in the chat here. So they're asking me why I can't live stream from Real Crusades history. It's because I caught a live stream ban for, I'm not even sure exactly what it was that that YouTube kind of has these vague policies, but like I have a ban on live streaming from the Real Crusades History Channel until February. So I'll start live streaming from there again in February. But yeah, I mean, I'm still uploading videos there, of course. So, but anyway, so I guess episode 5. I don't know. It's very focused on the pregnancy of Queen Joan. Of course, again, it's not historical. So, like you were saying, Scott, it's kind of like we can't really, there's not much to talk about historically here. We can kind of go
other than just little bits and pieces, picking up details here and there.
Yeah, it's like, oh well, we can't, it's like we can say, oh well, that didn't happen. But okay, so I do think it kind of is an interesting opportunity to talk about, medieval women and like what medieval women were like. And that's one thing I think that is so profoundly gotten wrong in so many of these shows in Hollywood, is they get the attitude of like what a noble woman's attitude on would have been like, you know, about these issues. And I can't remember who it was last time who was saying something like there's that little part where Landry and the Queen are talking about running away together.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah, it's just dumb.
Yeah, it is. It's just,
and especially coming from Landry.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, you know, Landry. I mean, yeah, to me, he's a, you know, I like him. He's a good character. He's a, you know, both in appearance, and I think, you know, the actor, you know, he plays the part well. And it's just but having that come from him was just, you know, just completely off. I mean, you know,
it's just not the way people thought in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been the way people thought. And you know, this is something going back to something we discussed in a previous podcast, you know, whether the Queen, you know, the Queen, the King, you know, I don't know what the lineage of Queen Joan was historically, but, you know, she would have known was her duty to produce children.
And yeah, and that would have been her preoccupation too.
She would have
had dynastic concerns.
Yeah,
you know?
and I mean, both, you know, beneficial not just to her husband but to her own family, and so yeah, she would have, whether she couldn't stand the guy or not, she would have, you know, done her duty.
Yeah,
at least that's the way it looks to me.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right about that, and also I think you pointed out last time that she wouldn't have had a choice in the matter, and that's very true too. And also I think, you know, the scene where it's almost like kooky the way they keep having Philip IV make these remarks that kind of are almost like comical, like oh, you're the only one I can trust, you know, or like. Yeah. It's like, and then Landry kind of gives him a look like, I'm screwing
oh
your
yeah,
wife.
well, there's a tension there between Landry and
it happens all the time.
Yeah,
like every remark King Philip makes to Landry is like something that's kind of like LOL, you know.
Yeah,
like, oh, you're my best friend, Landry. I'm so glad you're around. Like, or like. The part where he goes, you can't possibly love my wife more than me, and Landry kind of gets that look on his face, like, how many times are they going to do that?
Well, yeah, with the situation with the, you know, pregnancy coming along, and now it's all resolved, the king won't find out the whole business. I'm hoping that kind of recedes into the background. Really, and we don't hear any, you know, maybe Landry and the Queen do kind of go their own separate ways. I don't know. That's maybe knowing this kind of that's probably too much to hope for.
Even the part where you know, King Philip asks Landry to guard the Queen.
Yeah.
And then we see a scene where they're hanging out in a bedroom together.
Yeah.
It's like, that is not what that would have looked like. Let's say Philip IV did want to have, you know, one of the Templars guard the Queen. Okay, what that would have looked like was the Queen surrounded by a ton of other women, you know, ladies in waiting.
They wouldn't have been left alone in the same room. And a Templar wouldn't have consented to be left alone in the same room, I wouldn't think. Even if it was the Queen. I mean, it was just against their...
And he would have been there with a bunch of other Templars.
Too, yeah.
You know, and then there would have been all kinds of servants there too. It's like, it's this inaccurate view of the medieval world where people are spending all this time alone together. I mean, it's just, people went places in groups, you know, the nobility went around in groups, you know, and the Templars especially, like, I think that the Templars, they always went around.
A buddy system.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody, you had to be accompanied by, you know, another Templar.
It's not like a Templar just went around by himself.
No. I remember reading about that just recently. That in a, you know, totally reliable source that they did have that system where, you know, it was the, well, yeah, like symbolized on the horse, you know, the two Templars riding, even though I think that refers to them as being poor, not, you know, early in their existence. But I mean, it kind of symbolized, you know, that, yeah, there were brothers, and you don't go anywhere without at least another brother and that type of thing.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of,
I think that was part of their rule, that you don't, I don't know, technically, I don't know if it was or not, but I mean, you know, they had a buddy system.
And this one guy here, Versiv, I can't pronounce his name, but he starts with a V. He pointed out that there were a lot of stories in the Middle Ages about clergy fooling around.
Yeah.
That's very true. That's very true. However, Helen Nicholson, in her really good book about the Templars, points out that the Templars were actually one order that was considered particularly chaste. Like they were like sort of above reproach. Like they just didn't. There wasn't really much indication that there was much sort of sexual impropriety going on much with the Templars. So,
well, I mean, of course, with the charges of, you know, homosexuality, I guess that was one thing. But yeah, and that was, I guess they were rarely known to visit prostitutes or have, I mean, those things surely went on, but maybe not as much with, you know, nearly as much with them.
Right. Absolutely.
So, I mean, men are men, you know how it is. I mean, I can't, for the life of me, I can't understand. Yeah, I can understand monastic, you know, just classical monasticism much more than I can, you know, fighting order of knights remaining completely celibate and that kind of thing. It's hard to get my head around.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I think there very well could have been Templars who, you know, got some women when they needed them or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, but I do think it's noteworthy that historically we understand that the Templars they were kind of viewed to be sort of far less prone to scandal than the majority of than other religious orders. So
yeah. Well, maybe heading into their last years, though, I think that began, but it was really scandal more on the line of, you know, things other than sexual misbehavior. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and also, of course, and you know, we know that Philip IV's charges against them were totally were not true, and everywhere else that they were investigated, they were found innocent. Like
that's right. France was the only place they were found guilty.
Right, like I was just reading about the Kingdom of Aragon. They did their inquiry, and it was very brief, and they just were like, "There's nothing here." You know, Portugal.
The same thing happened in England.
England, you know, Portugal.
Give or take some details.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, it was France where, you know, they, you know, really came down on them.
Yeah. In fact, in Aragon, they actually, the King of Aragon petitioned the Pope to let the Templars all go over to a specifically Aragonese order, like a specifically Spanish order, so like of brother knights. So the tradition of you know, the warrior monks continued because it's interesting that the Templars have a really active history in Spain because of the Reconquista, and especially
I've been reading a lot about that now. Yeah,
it's pretty intriguing.
Realize they had such. I didn't realize until I, you know, started, you know, these or have read a couple of books and working on the one I'm now, that they were so active in the Reconquista. Yeah, I would really assume that their activities were, you know, largely confined to the Middle East.
Yeah, well, I mean, the popes considered the Crusades in Spain to be just as important, and so they were very active there. Like, for example, at the famous Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa, the Templars were in the vanguard, and in fact, the Templars actually took the heaviest casualties at Las Navas de Tolosa. They were like some of the first guys fighting. And the same thing when James I of Aragon conquered the island of Majorca at the Battle of Portopee, the Templars were in the vanguard there too, and caught most of the casualties there. So,
and see, these types of things have been a revelation for me because, I just always thought the Templars were, I knew they were scattered around everywhere, but maybe I was under the impression they were, their support came from all these lands, but they did most of their activity was centered in the Holy Land, but no, I'm just learning more about how much they were involved in the Reconquista.
Yeah, they were very involved. I mean, they were mainly involved in Portugal and Aragon. Like that's where they were the most active, and that's mainly because Castile had very early on had its own brother knight orders.
Yeah.
Whereas Aragon didn't have them until after the Templars were dissolved, and the Pope gave the Aragonese permission to kind of transfer the Templars over to sort of a new Aragonese order.
Oh, okay.
But
much the same that happened, say, in France with the Hospitallers.
Right. Yeah.
And property got transferred to the Hospitallers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another thing I was kind of thinking about when I was watching episode 5, and they had the thing about France and England going to war is, and I think this is the 14th century, so this may be a little different. Like I've been reading this really interesting book by a historian named Simon Barton about the aristocracy in 12th century Leon and Castile. And again, this is Spain. I mean, I love Spain, but he was talking about how when the Christian kingdoms in Spain would go to war with each other, it was kind of a little bit more like they would almost treat it almost more like tournaments, when the armies would meet, they would almost like sort of do tilting and stuff like that, and kind of he said they were reluctant to get really seriously brutal with each other as opposed to when they were fighting the Muslims.
Yeah, well, I guess they were they knew they faced a bigger enemy, so they.
Well, also, I think it was like what he was saying is war between Christians.
Yeah,
was treated a little bit more like, okay, they're not willing to just go full on, slaughterfest or something like they would almost kind of decide some of it through like almost like a tournament style battle more than just a full on battle. It's kind of interesting, but it was a real brief comment he just made. But he just said how, the nature of war between the Christian kingdoms in Spain was more subdued and more less brutal and more almost like tournament style than when they were fighting the Muslims, which was this hardcore crusade type.
I guess that's what I mean. There was a common, they had a common enemy that was bigger than themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I guess there was an underlying reluctance to kill your, whom you're going to need to be your ally. You may well need as an ally in the near future. So yeah, I can see some of the psychology there.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, I was going to ask you, Scott. You've been reading, or have you been reading your? I know you got copies of William of Tyre, didn't you?
Yes. No, I haven't started on it yet.
Okay.
That's part of my reading plan for this year is to read at least three books of primary source, more advanced books on primary sources this year. So yes, I intend to get around to William this year.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I was kind of thinking about how, talking about the Templars, it's sort of noteworthy that William of Tyre, we talk about, okay, well, where did some of these myths maybe about the Templars come from? Like some of the negative myths. And I do think we could look a little bit at William of Tyre.
He was critical of the Templars.
Right. And it was, what he said was kind of some of the stuff you'll hear people say now. Like he said, they started out pure and good, but later on they became corrupt.
I was just reading that account in Marcus Bull's book. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And it's kind of interesting because, excuse me, the reason he held that opinion or wrote that is more because of his personal issues with the Grand Master. And the fact that the Templars were supported by during his life, the patriarch was Heraclius, right? And William had wanted to be patriarch of Jerusalem, but Heraclius kind of leveraged his way in there instead.
Yeah.
And William kind of held that grudge against Heraclius. And because Heraclius was so closely aligned with the Templars, William kind of always held that grudge.
Now, William had his pretty high position himself, though, as Archbishop of Tyre, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was it.
But yeah, I guess, yeah, there's always upward mobility, sure.
Yeah. But it's kind of interesting how we can almost sort of trace, you know, I mean, yeah, it's like William of Tyre has kind of skewed the historical record just because, you know, he's such an important source. So it's like his personal prejudice against the Templars, we can't really we have to question it. And and we can't just say like, oh, well, that must be how it was. You know,
right.
There's some, anyway, that's kind of interesting.
So then you'd say maybe that William of Tyre was kind of the beginning of
I think,
what happened in the historiography of the Templars since, or influenced it maybe.
Yeah, I can see how that could be kind of a, you know, sort of a seed in this longer process in which this sort of idea came up that, oh, well, you know, they started out as this good thing and then they became corrupt, you know, although, you know, but people like Helen Nicholson and Malcolm Barber, who I think are, you know, the foremost scholars on the Templars, they don't agree with that. They don't see any evidence that by the end of their career, the Templars were, you know, somehow just like corrupt and greedy, and they just don't see that. And I think they're right, you know. But
maybe well, one theme I'm noticing in the later history of the Templars is, you know, they're regarded as arrogant.
Yes, yeah, I think that makes sense.
And, you know, kind of somewhat drunk with power, maybe.
I think that, yeah, that makes sense. And the truth is they were like at the top of society at that point. I mean, they were hugely wealthy, hugely powerful. And yeah, there were some Templars who started to kind of, you know, adopt some of the ostentation of the knightly class.
Well, that's what I've been reading about in Bull's book about, you know, several, you know, the Grand Masters, you know, they were kind of a mixed lot. I mean, some of them were, you know, really kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, did some really crazy things.
Like, what's his name? De Ridderford. He was.
Gerard de Ridderford was, I guess, the most outstanding example. But, you know, it seems like in the later history, I don't have the book in front of me. I can't, you know, cite any specific instance, but, you know, there were some Grand Masters who were very willful men, and they were, yeah, there's a lot of references to their arrogance and you know, maybe self-importance. You know, by that time they had grown into that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I don't want to necessarily say that you know, William of Tyre was entirely wrong. I mean, maybe there was some truth in what he was saying. I don't know, but I guess we just have to be kind of skeptical about it. But so this guy,
like I said, I'm reading this book by Marcus Bull right now, and there seems to be quite a bit of that in there.
Yeah. So this guy on here, Mac and Cheese, just told me that I love the history of the Crusades because of you. I just want to say thank you, Mac and Cheese. I'm glad.
Well, thank you, Mac and Cheese. We really appreciate it.
And he says he's going to buy us a beer sometime. So
okay.
Let's do it.
I don't drink, anymore, but at least I'll take him up on a Diet Coke.
Yeah, and he also says he's going to Israel soon, so he's going to let us know.
Oh yeah,
he's going to get us some footage from Accra. Is that right, Mac and Cheese? Let's do that. And yeah, Eric Rogers says you have clarified a lot of myths for me. So thanks for the kind words to you, Eric.
Yeah, really, Eric. Well, we're doing our best here.
We're just guys who like history. So.
Yeah.
But that's cool. I'm glad you're reading some interesting stuff about the Templars, Scott, because it's
I've been primarily interested in this kind of stemmed from when I was starting to plan out my novels. And I wanted to the Templars have been so done to death in cinema, TV, books, both fiction and scholarly books. I mean, and there's just so comparatively little about the Hospitallers, and they don't have the heroic status that the Templars do, nor the reputation, any kind of underhanded things about being the Illuminati or something like that, in present times. But anyway, I just wanted to focus a little bit more on the Hospitallers, and that was to the neglect of the Templars. I've known who they are and what their place was and their basic history and so on. But I've been. It's time to get up to speed on the Templars for me.
Yeah. Yeah, this guy on here, who's also he's on here a lot, Scutum Fidelis. He says, how do you sort through all the various opinions and sort the truth from fiction? And what I'm just going to say to that is there's really good scholarship from medieval historians about this stuff, like about the Crusades.
No, every aspect.
Yeah, you just have to kind of start getting familiar with the various scholars, and you start looking at their research and how in depth is their research, the primary sources they're working with, and it's like at this point I feel like I've just got like a list of go-to names.
Yeah, we do have kind of a basic canon of literature,
right? Like okay, so like Christopher Tyerman, Jonathan Riley Smith,
right.
Malcolm Barber,
Thomas Madden.
Yeah, Tom Madden, Joseph O'Callaghan, for Spain. I've got this guy now, Simon Barton, Roger Collins. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of them. There's just a lot of really good scholars out there, and and you can start building your library from bibliographies. Like, okay, you get a book by Jonathan Riley Smith. Well, he's got a massive bibliography of different sources he looked at.
I picked up a few books that way. I picked up a few books that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of what I would suggest. I mean,
but there is a basic, going against a basic canon of books that should be read first, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, and this guy Eric Rogers says, do you know of anybody on YouTube trying to debunk your view of the Crusades? I do not. No.
Now there are other Facebook. There's one in particular that I won't name, but they're totally. I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Stephen. But yeah, they're well, we'd be at war if it were 800 years ago.
So anyway, I guess we've kind of we've talked a lot about well, I've talked a little bit about Knightfall, I guess.
Yeah, we have.
Are you are you writing much right now, Scott?
I'm trying to finish up volume 2 of To Shine with Honor. I'm working on it
how's
right
that going?
Oh, it's going well. It you know, there was there was a lot of fill-in material that when I finished the second to last manuscript, close to a year ago, there was still just a whole lot on Dorylaeum and Nicaea that I had to fictionalize, and I've been working on that for 6 months.
So you're like in the thick of the First Crusade then?
I'm in the thick of it. Yeah, I'm Dorylaeum and not Antioch, but Nicaea are the two main battles that are featured but yes, I am in the thick of the First. I'm in the Battle of Dorylaeum is ended, and the book they'll end up in Antioch. By the end of the second book, the First Crusade has reached Antioch and has just arrived there, if I remember correctly.
So,
but no, the third volume will really, that will be 80% or 90% in Outremer and the first 2 decades of the Crusade, the Kingdom of Jerusalem and the Crusader states will be set in that. Yeah, I mean the book will be the third volume will be 10 to 15% events and concurrent events with family members and so on in France, and then it'll be split equally between the say half of the siege of the second half of the siege of Antioch and around and through the fall of Jerusalem and the death of Baldwin the First, and then the last third or the last half will be of the years, say 1100 to 1118 to 1120, largely in the Kingdom of Jerusalem.
Okay.
So it covers a lot.
That's awesome.
But yeah,
interesting time period.
Well, yeah, it really. It's I'm the First Crusade and the events from the time of Christ and before, how it all came together is really my main interest in all of this.
Yeah.
If I were working on an advanced degree, that's what I would be focusing on.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, about how interesting the late 11th century really is, just because the stuff that's going on in Sicily and Spain is actually really interesting. It's like, to me, it almost is this sort of interesting rise of the West that kind of crescendos with the First Crusade. Like you've got at the end of the 11th century, you've got the Norman conquest of Sicily, but then you've also got the situation in Spain where King Fernando,
advancing Reconquista.
Yeah, and where Fernando I of Leon and then his son Alfonso VI are just like the top monarchs in Spain, and they basically are able to just kind of devastate all of these formerly very powerful Muslim territories. And then that kind of all eclipses, or not eclipses, but climaxes with the First Crusade. So it's kind of, it's fascinating. The rise of the West as the 11th century progresses is really, really interesting. So.
Well, and to me, the events, from the time of Christ up until the 11th century, just had all Western civilization just moves toward this kind of inevitable, climax with the First Crusade. I mean, it's just fascinating to me.
Yeah.
All the
really
dots there, and I'm just beginning to connect them for myself.
Yeah.
So it goes back to how we were talking about, crusade, motivations, and how, what really were their motivations, and I know, we've conversed a lot with, Paul Crawford about that.
Yeah, we need to get him on again and talk about the 11th century with him.
Well, he really has made a lot of things, clear about, just motives to me, and just what he's said and written.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, so yeah, you're working on your book,
but I am working on the second volume.
Yeah,
which I want to get published, say early this summer, and
that's good,
and get it out, and 2 books. You knew I won that one award for the first volume. The Bragg medallion.
Yes, yeah.
And now I'm I'm a finalist now for a category Chaucer award.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm blown away.
Do you have to submit your book?
Yeah, you submit. And I was just going to tell you, you need to be submitting your book.
I know. I haven't submitted my book for anything.
Helena is, she and I work together a lot on our respective books. I mean, we're kind of, critique partners, and I read her stuff and she reads mine, and
yeah, I am. So I'm getting back to work on my second.
But she was the one who sent me a list of literary contests and sites that would review it and stuff like that. And a couple didn't go anywhere, but 2 have gone somewhere now. Just getting as a finalist for a Chaucer award is a pretty big deal for a category award, because you're up against maybe 3 other books.
Yeah, somebody just said
kind of a nail biter.
Somebody just said what happened to Helena Schroeder. She actually still she posts stuff on the Real Crusades history blog like all the time. If you want, she posts something on there every week. So if you, this guy says it's mac and cheese again. He's saying he misses her, and yeah, we miss her too. She's been having difficulty being able to get on the podcast with her schedule and with her internet connection. But yeah, if you go to realcrusadeshistory.com, she does the blog posts there, so you can read her
I imagine that, I think Helena is scheduled. She's going to be retiring at the end of this year.
Yeah,
and she and her husband, I think, own a house in Greece on an island, Cathera.
Yeah,
and they're going to live there, and I guess their internet connections will be a lot better. So I expect she'll be on a lot more.
Yeah, I would think so. But,
will be joining us, for which I look forward to too, because she's always great to have.
Oh yeah. So Scott, your book's going to be out this summer, hopefully.
I hope by early summer. I'm got a goal by the end of January to finish up this manuscript and send it on to. Helena reads it, and then I promised Ginu a copy.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I will have my second book done towards the end of this year. Like I'm actually just now kind of getting back onto it.
What is the subject of your second book? You told me before.
It's the Third Crusade. It's it's going to be my sort of magnum opus on the Third Crusade. So
is it more than one volume?
No, it's going to be one. I mean, basically, it kind of starts around the siege of Acre, and it sort of climaxes with the treaty in 1192. But
okay.
I'm actually focusing on, for my main character, I'm using one of Richard's household knights who.
Oh, that's a good place to start.
Yeah,
a good character who, yeah.
Baldwin of Caron, and I'm gonna have as another one of my important characters is this Hospitaller whose name was Robert, who is one we know about him because he's one of the guys who got in trouble for charging early at at Arsenal.
Oh, okay.
And
he's a historical character.
Yeah, he's very briefly mentioned, but so it's like. But I was just thinking the other day, I was like, wait a minute, my main characters are going to be Robert and Baldwin again,
Well, that's good. Right. I mean, you created a strong character with Robert.
Well, but these are different Roberts.
Okay.
Because
that's right. We're talking about 80.
Yeah.
Sorry, my mind drifted there. We're talking about 70 years of difference or in that area.
Yeah, like why does the heathen rage? I've got Baldwin II of Jerusalem,
that's right,
king of Jerusalem, and then his knight Robert Burrus.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm looking at a different Baldwin, Baldwin of Caron, who is one of Richard's knights. And then this Hospitaller named Robert.
Okay.
But Richard's going to be a main character too, so it's going to be. And I'm going to focus a little bit too on Richard's wife. Is going to play a pretty
Berengaria.
Yeah, she's going to play a pretty significant role.
So you're going to work. You're going to try and bring the truth about their relationship and everything.
Yeah,
in fictional form. I mean, you're going to tell it in fictional form.
Yeah, but I'm also thinking probably in the next month or so, I'm going to put out this short story I wrote.
Yeah, about Bohemund.
Yeah, it's actually about Bohemund's son, Bohemund II. It's based on some stuff from Usama ibn Munkid, who Shizar was really close to the Principality of Antioch. Shizar was where the Munkids were.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this account about this battle between where Usama and his horsemen fight Bohemund II. And I kind of worked off that. So I think I'm going to go ahead. At first I was thinking, I was going to just kind of put that aside and maybe do a collection of short stories someday. But I think I'm going to go ahead and just put this one short story out on Kindle.
By all means, put it out and see what the reaction is. I met you, I belonged to a short story group on LinkedIn. And we would write a story, was it every week? And I wrote probably, 8 stories, and they were put out every week. So they were what's called 5-minute stories. Like we had a word count limit of, it was ridiculously low. I don't remember, but
it's a good exercise.
Yeah. And but I'm just saying, going back to your short story, that's the way to do it, is get it out there. And that was my experience with that group.
So we may have a pretty good little schedule this year. So if I get my short story out in a month or a month and a half or something like that, and then you can put out your book in the summer, and then hopefully.
And Helena's working on another book.
Oh, okay, cool.
In fact,
hopefully
we're going to trade manuscripts. This spring, she's going to get what I'm working on, and she's sending me hers.
Yeah, I'm going to send her.
And I get Helena writes. So. I mean, she I'll feel fortunate to finish the 3rd volume of my series. Helena probably will have written 10 books during that time.
Yeah, and and then hopefully my next book will be out toward the end of this year, and and Helena told me she would look at my book too, so I'm gonna.
Oh, good. Helena's been. Don't expect easy criticisms. All I'm saying. Be ready. But no, she's been a great critic, and really, really did help me, put some stuff in that improved the first volume just a whole lot. And,
yeah, I'm gonna have the same person who helped me on Why Does the Heathen Rage help me on this new one too. Like this friend of mine who
editor
is, yeah, she's very knowledgeable about medieval things, and she's also an English lit person. So she's
that's a good.
She's been helpful too. So anyway, so I think we've gone long enough here, haven't we, Scott?
I think so. I think we've covered most everything on Knightfall and kind of brought people up with what we're doing, at least literarily, and in terms of where we are podcast wise.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think we've but yeah, I didn't. So that'll give us your short story, my book, and another book from Helena. Probably this year.
Yeah.
So that's 4 things that will be, will be publishing this year.
Yeah, plus all the Real Crusades history videos coming out. So
yeah, well, yeah, you put out videos like Helen does writing. I mean, I just don't see how you do it. Yeah. But anyway, we'll pick up on Knightfall again last time. I'm enjoying it for what it is. I can't deny that.
I'm going to call it a night.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks for listening.
All right. Good night, folks. Scott and I will talk to you later.
Okay, bye. Good night, everybody.